Matt, really big weekend of fights coming up this weekend from, of course, the UFC Apex facility. Matt, they're paying for the $100 million Apex facility with fights like this. But again, really excited for it. At welterweight between Sean Brady and Christian Aguilera. And Matt, a lot of people weren't familiar with Christian Aguilera before his UFC debut. I mean, if you were an LFA fan, a fan of regional MMA in the States, you might have seen him headline LFA 44 with Matthew Franku. He fought David Machad that we've seen in the UFC. He also had a fight early on against another notable name in Matt Sales. Now, all of those fights losing efforts, but he has fought decent competition in the past. So Christian Aguilera, what do we know about him? Really technical boxing, really crisp striking. He mixes in feints very well. He can throw a ton of power. He can get a little wild, but we saw that work to his advantage in his UFC debut against Anthony Ivy. Finished that fight in the first 59 seconds. Looked amazing. A lot of people said, Anthony Ivy, why is he in the UFC? Craig and Matt said, we both picked Anthony Ivy. Big mistake. But Christian Aguilera has a chance to make a statement here because he's taking on the undefeated fighter in Sean Brady. This is a guy coming at us from Philadelphia, PA. We've seen the brothers, Chris and Kyle Dawkins, come under there recently. But for Sean Brady, we've seen in the past, in his training camp, featuring Paul Felder. But for this one, mainly on the Instagrams, it's Eddie Alvarez. And I think that's the perfect guy to train. Hopefully, Eddie Alvarez's wife isn't in the gym yelling Eddie every time Sean Brady capitalizes on something. Sean Brady, of course, a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt under Daniel Gracie. And the thing for me with Sean Brady is the fact that when we'll go through some of his recent fights, especially his 2 UFC fights, he's fought good competition, former CFFC welterweight champ, defended it twice, and he's fought good guys the length up. The other thing about him, incredibly well-rounded. You think one fight, this guy's a great striker. The next fight you see, he can bring it to the mat. He can really do it in a lot of different ways. And for me, Sean Brady at this point in his career, 12 wins as a pro, 4 wins amateur, undefeated, the whole length of it. It's the fact that he's the new breed of mixed martial artists. When you see kids going into MMA now, it's not the Wonderboy Thompson route where you took karate. It's not Anthony Pettis with Taekwondo. You're not just training in the one discipline. Sean Brady, incredibly well-rounded. I'm really excited about this matchup. I've talked enough. What do you make of this one?
Yeah, so this is kind of the perfect fight to get the whole fight night started, just because you know it's going to be fireworks for as long as it lasts. Now, Sean Brady, you had kind of alluded to it with how good his level of competition has been since entering the UFC, because a lot of guys, their UFC debut isn't against a name like Court McGee, and he was able to go out there, and Court McGee is hard to look good against, and Sean Brady did enough to get the win. It wasn't his most impressive performance, but if you beat a guy like Court McGee, it really shows a lot. And not that Court McGee is really a gatekeeper, but beating Court McGee just means, okay, you deserve to be here, you belong here. And then the Nordiev win too. He got 110-8 round in there. We really get to see a lot more aspects and a lot more wrinkles of Sean Brady's game. And we were kind of talking off air. It's not often that you go from fighting a guy like Court McGee and then Nordiev and then Aguilera. It seems like he's almost regressing a little bit with his level of competition. And for a guy like Sean Brady, who he's really young in his career, he's got an undefeated record, he has a lot of really promising signs for a young up-and-coming MMA fighter. You would think that they'd start giving him at least guys who, maybe they're not in the peak of their careers anymore, but guys who at least have somewhat big names that he could be able to build his own name off of.
It's a little bit surprising, and I like that you brought those fights up, because Court McGee, a guy that he was on The Ultimate Fighter, it seems like ages ago.
Yeah,
and then the fight that he had against Ismail Nordiev, and it might come as a surprise to some people. I know it did to people in the comments section the last time we talked about him. He's with Elite MMA Championships, and they're teasing a fight coming up here shortly for Nordiev. 2-2 in the UFC. He didn't get released. He chose to go to that promotion. He's with Paradigm Sports. They know what they're doing with him. It's a great agency to be represented by. But for Sean Brady, like we said, you look at the fights. The Court McGee fight, 2 of the judges scored at 30-27 for Brady, one of them 29-28. If you look over at the striking totals, this is where it gets interesting. So this guy, really well-rounded. One fight, he looks like a Muay Thai guy. The next fight, he's a wrestler. So you look at the Court McGee fight, he went 148 for 240 total strikes at 56%. He went 2 of 3 in his takedowns. You look at his fight against Ismail Nordiev, and yeah, while he didn't win it as convincingly, 30-27, 29-27, and 29-28, 125 for 191 of his total strikes, 51%. So striking at a really good clip against decent competition, and he went 4 of 9 in his takedown attempts. Now, the Austrian Wonder Boy, perfect wrestler? No. Is he still in the UFC? No. So you can make arguments and really kind of try and slag Sean Brady. But again, I'm going to talk about the fights that he had before the UFC. While he was on the CFFC train, in his first 5 fights, he fought Aaron Jeffrey. Now, Aaron Jeffrey, what does that name mean to you? Pretty good Canadian prospect in my view. Now, Did he win on Dana White's Contender Series and beat Brendan Allen? No. Allen won, got a shot in the UFC. But Aaron Jeffrey's a very, very good prospect that we've seen coming out of Canada. Beat Colton Smith, former Ultimate Fighter winner on the regional scene. Colton Smith, you want to see the weirdest record of all time that rivals that of Terrion Ware? Go back and look at Colton Smith's 3-fight losing streak that he had in the UFC. And then again, the fights that Sean Brady's had so far in the UFC. So for me, you look at everything all together. Christian Aguilera, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu brown belt from 10th Planet. That means something, especially being a California guy. And overall, he trains under Colin Oyama. One of the good gyms that you hear about Colin Oyama when he's at a UFC event, but you don't hear him brought up in the same breaths of Jason Perillo, Mike Brown, some of the bigger names. You never hear Colin Oyama until it's time. And then, oh, by the way, he's a guy that trains with, this is Christian Aguilera, Ricky Simone, Luis Smolka, Frank Camacho, Alex Perez. A lot of those guys are perfect for this matchup as well because a lot of those guys bring different things to a training camp like that. Raymond Daniels sprinkled in there somewhere as well for a little bit of funky striking, 720 punches. We spent a lot of time on this fight. I've said a lot about it just because I want to highlight both of these guys for the fact that the odds are way out of there. And I understand why, but Sean Brady right now a -390 favorite average on best fight odds. He opened as a -350. Christian Aguilera coming in here, the +300 underdog, open as a +285. If you look over in Tapology, out of a limited sample size of votes, 754 votes, 92% going with Sean Brady, 71% predicting a win by decision. I think Sean Brady's going to get the win. I really do. Again, it comes down to that well-roundedness. Christian Aguilera can go for takedowns, but we've seen it especially in the Frinku fight where he was going to go for the takedown. Frinku threw in a leg, just tripped him over. He can get them. He can get a little bit wild. He's a very, very crisp and technical striker, like I said, and he throws a lot of power. So could I see a flash knockout? 100%. If Sean Brady goes in there and wants to box because he got excited training with Eddie Alvarez, then maybe it's a perfect path for Christian Aguilera. I just don't see it that way. I see it for Sean Brady, where he just continues to rack up the wins before he faces that elite level competition or even ranked guys at 170 pounds.
Sean Brady should be able to get this win fairly easily just because he is such a well-rounded guy. So no matter where the fight goes, he will have at least some level of success. And then I'll even tell you who I want his next opponent to be. Fight Diego Sanchez next. Because at least it's a big guy. It's a big name at the end of his career that you can sort of build a little bit of momentum off and get your name, maybe not in massive headlines, but a lot more eyes will be drawn towards your fight. So there, Sean Brady, I've even got your next fight set up. So hopefully you can get this one done.
Matt, really looking forward to this card. Yeah. We've got an extended look at our main event between Anthony Smith and Alexander Rakic. You're not going to want to miss that. Keep it locked in with Fight Night Picks, Matt. And as we always say, let's get into it.